Well, for more on how companies are adapting to cultural change, I'm joined by Paul Darcy. He's Senior Vice President and Head of Marketing at Indeed.com. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Rochelle. Thank you.
Now, Mattel is a brand that was created to empower women after the Second World War, but then its message seems to have morphed. Was Barbie destined to have an identity crisis?
It's very difficult in some ways when you have an iconic brand that's very large and #1 in the world in its category. It's hard to change and to adapt to a changing world. And so in terms of its own success, with declining sales, this may be the opportunity for them to reach a broader audience and do the things they've wanted to do probably for a long time.
Now, beyond the declining sales, were there any other key factors that influenced Mattel's decision to do this now?
It's hard to say exactly why they are doing this now, but it's very clear that the world is changing. And if you want to be a big global brand, you need to be relevant to as many people and as many types of people around the world as possible. And there's a lot that Barbie could do to be more relevant to more types of people in more places. So it is a good time for doing that.
Now, as they fail to adapt, some people say it's a question of too little, too late. As you look at other competitors, who would you say is the main competition growing in this space?
I'm not an expert on this space. As a marketer, it's clear that competitive forces are obviously at factor here. Again, Mattel and Barbie have been #1 for a very long time in this space, but the markets are changing, and many other brands are becoming relevant. Clearly, the Frozen brands, American Girl, there are others are out there that are changing the landscape and appealing to very different audiences. I think the key thing is that the toy market is an enormous industry, and people buy dolls and toys for a lot of different reasons. And appealing to as many people in as many different buying circumstances as possible makes sense. And so Barbie as a brand, as an asset, is something that is universal, it's iconic, it's something that everyone knows. And so for them, finding ways to take that asset and make it relevant to a broader audience is a great opportunity for them. It's a very obvious thing for them to do.
Now, you mentioned, obviously, the Barbie brand is very iconic, and then you also have this shift with diversity. So how important is it for a company to include diversity and adapt, especially in this current climate where you have technology, you have social media, where people can really be very vocal?
Yeah, well, absolutely. There's been controversy, obviously, over Barbie for a very long period of time. It's a 50-plus-year-old brand, and for a long time, for a generation, people have talked about the same issues that have been, wildly discussed on social media over the last couple of days. Diversity as a principle is something that's very important, and it does matter to people. People want their products and their brands to be representative of them. In many cases, choosing a toy for you or choosing a toy for your child, it says something about you. And so that decision people want to do in a way that they feel good about. And the lack of diversity in the products, I'm sure, impacts that. And Mattel knows that. Their research certainly would show that. So being able to appeal and connect and be relevant to more people is a really important part of evolving a brand like Barbie.
And speaking of evolving the brand, we're also seeing Mattel teaming up with Amazon and Google for different projects to really update their offerings. What are some of the lessons for iconic brands that have relied on their history for a long time instead of adapting to today's consumer?
I think this is the challenge of having an iconic brand. What makes brands iconic is that when anyone talks about them or thinks about them, the same image, that same icon comes into their head. Everyone knows what Barbie is, and when they think of Barbie, they see the same sort of doll. And this is the challenge of this sort of move. They're diversifying what Barbie looks like and what the experience of having a Barbie is like. And that means there'll be different images in people's heads of what Barbie is. So the challenge for them is to be able to broaden the support, broaden the appeal, reach different audiences, but still have as close to a single powerful global image and global brand as possible. That's the really tough marketing challenge that comes with a move like this.
Well, we'll see how that pans out for them. Paul Darcy there, joining us from Indeed.com. Thanks so much.